Namaste and welcome everyone. Glad to have you back this week. I hope you've had a good week and that you're well and happy. This week we move on to episode 6, chapter 7, which is labeled the main course of the book, The Invitation. This chapter centers on prayer and healing, various forms of prayer and healing. I think it's a very meaningful chapter. It'll take the concentration on your part to pick up the nuances, but it's okay. You can always go back and listen to it or get a copy of the book and read this chapter if you're interested in this particular topic. Anyhow, here it is, chapter 7. Pardon me, the main course. Waldo, Penelope, and Christo head out the exit from the dining room into the fresh air. As they stride measured steps along the stone-paved path, a gentle breeze freshens their spirit. There is much to think about and assimilate. Yet there is a feeling of familiarity, not only with what they have taken in, but also with the people they had engaged in such sterling conversation along the way. Penelope is preoccupied with the bump in the night she received as she heard Shakespeare offer his poetic verse dealing with the world's stage. She can't quite figure out why she resonated so strongly with his portrayal. Perhaps because she also was deep in thought about the influence all her new friends are having on her. She takes it all to wonder, letting herself just bathe in the loving energy of her two gentlemen, true gentlemen, companions. Pardon me. Christo lets himself enjoy the moment, his mind clear and unfettered by random or even purposeful thoughts. The moment is all he needs or wants now. And Waldo? He's enjoying the two of them, both for the delightful company and also for the warmth he feels from the peace of mind that now fills both. Then he breaks the solitude with a simple declaration. I think it's time for the main course now. We should return. And with that, return they do. Who will we be dining with now? Inquires Penelope. You'll see soon enough, he returns, and Penelope frowns for a moment. No need to frown, dear one, he says. You'll be smiling very soon now. Just trust in the truth for you, and as you would say, all is just fine that way. A trusting smile crosses Penelope's face as she fills her heart with the warmth of authenticity that exchanges among the three of them. Excuse me. And so it is, she says to punctuate the point. Yes, indeed, so it is, Christo says in kind. Waldo just smiles in acceptance of the truth as it is spoken. Suddenly he recalls what he wanted to mention to the two of them. Oh, I almost forgot. I wanted to commend you both for your stance on the full understanding use of the greeting Namaste. There aren't many who understand the distinction you have made between having some level of divinity in you and owning the fullness of your divinity. It's like the difference between saying we have God in us versus saying that we recognize and celebrate God expressed as us. That's all the difference in the world between the two. All is divine and all is God, and you have mastered both the idea and its expression. Well, thank you, says Penelope, still reflecting some hesitation and dealing fully with the truth that has been uttered. But you know, Waldo, I have been bothered by people's lack of understanding of how to manage their perception of life, to manifest their perception of life even when they know God is all. What do you mean? Asks Waldo. Well, from your eavesdropping on our conversation, she laughingly begins, teasing Waldo about his spiritual telepathic acuity. I'm sure you know that we've been talking some about loyalty to truth and its expression. The difficulty of which I speak deals with exactly this, loyalty to what rings true to us. As I see it, this is largely because many people are still caught in some old misunderstandings about truth. For example, Recently, a woman who has been abused by her husband spoke to Christo and me about the abuse. She was having great difficulty in dealing with her husband, even considering leaving him, because she was putting his divinity first. And that's obviously a lovely thought. She couldn't leave him, she said, because she recognized his behavior as a call for help, a call for love. And to abandon him would leave him without the love he was asking for. And just why is that an issue with you? Asked Waldo. Well, it's not an issue with me, but it was with her. Clarity began to draw on her as we helped her see that if she didn't respect her own divinity, that she could be allowing him to have enormous guilt for having abused her. Plus, she could end up being battered again. Without self-respect for our divinity, we can set up a lose-lose situation at every turn. Did she end up with this understanding? Waldo asked. Oh, yes, she did, Christo chimes in. She finally came to understand this attention to one's own divinity is of the utmost importance. What's even more exciting to me is that she also saw that this took care of Jesus' admonition to love one's neighbors as oneself. How so? What do you mean? Asked Waldo. Well, in this case, for example, if she takes care to love her own divinity in ways that hold her divinity from harm's way, by doing so, she is also respecting his divinity and thus loving him. The confusion came because she took the idea of respecting his divinity to mean that she ought to overlook her own divinity just to respect his call for love. What she finally came to see is by withdrawing from the relationship, she was in fact honoring his call for love because it kept him from additional abuse, which saved him from thus abusing himself with feelings of guilt and shame. To say nothing, of course, about getting some professional help with his issue of self-hate and from perhaps going to jail. Well, the bottom line for me, as Penelope, is that we must respect the dignity of our own divinity first, which validates walking in our own truth. This is the duty of everyone and what it is that elevates dignity for all. When we walk in full understanding of our own truth, which is our divinity, how then can that be wrong? If we are tending to everyone else's dignity, when will we have time to acknowledge and demonstrate our own? Furthermore, if we take care of theirs, when and how will they learn to come from their own truth for themselves? It is accurate to say that many out there would love to tell us how to live life. Lord knows they do it regularly, but our only commitment is to knowing and activating our very own for ourselves. This may seem selfish, but in all reality, it's selfless. It is selfless in that I give up my view of self as valuable only in the context of conforming to the norm, and instead living what rings true to me. In that way, I'm living free from the control of the ego, which most have come to think of as the self. But in my freedom, I come to live selflessly. Some say that it's arrogant to think we are one with God. I say it's vain to think we are separate from God or from one another. You two are absolutely amazing, affirms Waldo. You've heard and assimilated the truth about so many matters and are teaching from such a rich and wonderful base, and always guided by consciousness each of you demonstrates so uniquely. Amazing, truly amazing. I am so proud of you and pleased for you. Well, thank you, Waldo, Christo says, with Penelope nodding alongside. But I think we both realize by now is that you and others like you, it is you who have been teaching us what we needed to know, the meaning of our divinity in its fullest sense. Yes, Penelope adds genuinely, and we are so grateful for the opportunity to serve in this way. We are so glad to help, as it's always been our calling, and we are so filled with joy to be able to continue as we do. And you two are far from finished with what you've begun, although quickly adds affirmatively. So keep life on track as it's now going, and you'll be just fine. Christo and Penelope exchange glances, knowing that what they have thought to be true is coming to fruition. And yet they don't know and really don't care in what form it will appear. The important thing is that it does appear. Well, the time has come to gather for the main course. This time you'll be dining with a trio who inspires some scintillating conversation with regard to what is now included under the rubric of New Thought, although not publicly revealed as by that name to date. The ideas are public, but what they come from is not quite fully grasped yet. As in most cases, where such thinking seems to assault current belief, revealing the source could well only exacerbate the issue. Well, let's enter over here. Waldo points to the ornate wooden entry to the west. Here we are now, he announces their arrival. Penelope and Christo, I'd like you to meet this distinguished trio. Mary Baker Eddy, discoverer and founder of Christian Science. Ernest Holmes, who discovered the science of mind. And the inimitable Joel Goldsmith, who expanded phases of both to move interested parties into the infinite way work, as he labels it, the infinite way work. This is Penelope and Christo, you three, our honorees for this evening. Mutual greetings of namaste and hugs are shared all around the table. You are absolutely correct here, Waldo, announces Joel as all seat themselves. How's that, Joel? Asked Waldo. Well, one doesn't need to ask them what they mean by their authentically delivered greetings. I can feel them to the depths, he answers. Takes one to know one, Penelope says, without thinking about it, to everyone's delight. See, I told you so, affirms Joel once again. Well, this is an auspicious beginning, opens Mary. So let's continue on this line for a while, if that's all right with all of you, that is. Seeing no opposition, she then says, well, you two, we've heard quite clearly, and to our delight, your commentaries about authentic love, divinity, war and peace and such, and we admire the meetings that you have let come to awareness. Yes, and in some of your earlier conversations involving those you are teaching, you dealt with great wisdom regarding some very pithy topics, especially first cause and effect. I greatly admire your take on a metaphysical meditation of the Gospel of John, Ernest contributes. And I particularly like your take on prayer, Joel asserts. It's enlightening as well as disturbing to most who pray only with supplication. Thank God you are making people aware of the difference between the two. If you don't mind, my dear friends, I'd like to discuss our differing views on prayer for just a few moments. I hope that won't be too disconcerting as we dine together. Hearing no dissent, Joel then continues. Mary, would you kindly share your views about prayer so we can compare and contrast ours with yours? Oh, surely, Joel. And thank you for the honor of starting this conversation, as was sure to be one of, if not the very most important topic of the evening. And I do understand that there will be differing views, and that is how we learn from one another and about ourselves. I particularly like our friend William Wordsworth's acclamation about such sharing of views. God lends us to each other this way. Isn't that lovely? God lends us to each other this way. I just love the idea of being lent to someone who wishes to partake of another's views. Well, let me begin by lending you this definition of prayer, although it would be difficult for me to summarize all anyone can know about prayer in one simple explanation. In a few understated sentences, I'll just say that prayer is the expression of fervent desire for growth and grace, expressed in patience, meekness, love, and good deeds. And we must pray without ceasing, knowing that such prayer is answered insofar as we put our desires into practice. So, asked Ernest, what I hear you saying is that prayer combines the expression of desire combined with the activation of that desire in practice? As I see it, this places it at the center of fulfillment for our prayers. Is this correct? Yes, Ernest, you understand my explanation correctly. In order to pray aright, we must enter into the closet of our heart and shut the door behind us. We must close the lips and silence the material senses. In the quiet sanctuary of earnest longings, we must deny sin and plead God's allness. We must resolve to take up the cross and go forth with honest hearts to work and watch for wisdom, truth, and love. In this way, self-forgetfulness, purity, and affection are constant prayers. Practice not profession, understanding not belief. Gain the ear and right hand of omnipotence, and they assuredly call down infinite blessings. This sounds to me, asserts Joel, like you are saying that we are pleading by supplication and by our own action to a God that is separate from us and for something we don't think we yet have. Am I understanding you correctly, Mary? In a way, that's correct, says Mary. A great sacrifice of material things must precede this advanced spiritual understanding. The highest prayer is not one of faith merely, it is demonstration as well. And we need to understand that the Lord's Prayer is a prayer of soul, not of material sense. Yes, I like that much better, Joel says, because that puts all of life's desires on a spiritual plane instead of on gaining material ends. In this sense, adds Ernest, we come to know that there are no obstacles on the pathway of truth. We begin with the understanding that not only is God perfect, but God's law is also perfect. God creates only out of God's perfection, yet we appear to be an obstacle as we hold on to the idea that we are not also that perfection. We erect the barriers of unbelief and operate from a frame of mind that chokes truth from our awareness. As long as our thought, or said another way, our prayer form, is in line with God's truth and the truth of God's law of creation, prayer becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. This is the purpose of God's universe. Thus is the purpose of God's universe fulfilled in us all. Isn't that somewhat how we become a self-fulfilling prophecy, asked Penelope? Isn't that how we ourselves are the prayer that never ceases? Because we continually, in our state of innocence or grace, become aware of truth and thus subscribe to and obey only that which rings true to us. In this way, I think we have arrived at a combination of that which Mary and Ernest are saying to us. The situation is pregnant with pause, while all give thought to Penelope's comment. It seems to me, says Christo, that depends on how big we're willing to make God and what we think God is. From my limited understanding of what you folks think about both, I'd say that we all still could agree that God is all, with the only distinction being made between whether that God is all in all, or that God is all, or all as itself. It seems to me that when we see that God is in all, we have set up a duality that cannot resolve the riddle of oneness, except in a rather superficial way, that oneness is determined by the location of God, rather than all consisting of the essence that is God. That would be like saying that we all are kidneys just because there are kidneys in all of us. And Joel particularly is showing his amusement in Christo and Penelope's metaphysical approach to prayer as oneness. Mary and Ernest aren't quite sure about how Christo is going to finish his treatise, so they withhold judgment of any kind. And Christo continues, however, to say that we are kidneys just because we have kidneys somewhere in our bodies would be foolish indeed. Yet we decided earlier that we are divine and not a kidney personified. So how can just a piece of divinity or God reside in us? Which piece is it? And wherein does God, that is, divinity activated, reside? The obvious conclusion, it seems to me, is that God is all there is. There is no God and anything else. No God and. I think we can agree on just that much. At least I would hope this is so. And if we do agree to that, then what is the sense of praying for that which we already are or have? I don't think there's any real difference between what has been said so far in your very wise summary about real life. That is, life's true nature is spiritual and not what we see as the illusions of the physical, offers Joel. Mary and Ernest have said that prayer doesn't really have to do with physicality. They agree with you in that regard. So what I think they'd say is that all you need to pray for, spiritually that is to clear the way for the absolute understanding of our divinity. We would then let God's law of expressing truth come naturally to fruition. Oh, okay, I can see that, says Christo. In this way, then, I would suggest that the only legitimate prayer would be for absolute awareness of truth, because once aware, there is really no choice but to be obedient to the truth. The fullness of awareness is that compelling. Does anyone have anything to say to that? Asked Joel to the others. Well, as I have said, indicates Mary, there are illusions that keep us from such awareness. It is only when we spiritually sense, that is, the understanding that there is only truth in the spiritual world that we come to full awareness. Until and unless we commit to fervent prayer to eliminate false belief, it will not be made available to us. Be made available to us by whom? Penelope asked. By exactly whom? Just who is this that will make the elimination of false belief happen and thus declare awareness in its stead? Is it some god of another world? Does God make it happen? For that is God's law of action, says Ernest. No, he says, God does make it happen, for that is God's law of action. But we are God, answers Penelope. So in that way, aren't we giving ourselves a clarity that opens the door to truth awaiting activation, as only we can uniquely individuate it? Well, we are in perfect agreement there, says Ernest. At least you and I are in agreement that when we become aware of what rings true to us, the path that activates truth is free and clear, and thus truth expresses what it is, individuated as us. But we must still pray for that to happen. Again, inserts Christo, exactly to whom and what are we praying? Some God that is not also what we are? If so, we have just established illusion again. Illusion is non-existent. Only truth, God, spiritual consciousness really exists and is one, the same. So are we praying to ourselves? Pardon me. So are we praying to ourselves, to the highest form of what we are, the truth that is us, represented symbolically as consciousness, to the soul, that which always works us toward our highest good? Because that's all there really is. I don't mean to belittle this, but maybe God is like the great optimist in the sky, whose only job is to bring us clarity or awareness. Well, Ernest, Mary says, I've noticed in your work that you offer a formula for effective prayer. Tell us what that is about, if you will. Sure, Mary. Thanks for noticing and for that prompt. In the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 21, verses 21 and 22, we find that the things we need, we are to ask for, and we are to believe that we receive them. Thus, when we pray, we are to believe we have. A universal law that is creative surrounds us. It moves from thought to the thing. Unless there is first an image, some might call that image the word or the logos, it cannot move, for there would be nothing for it to move toward. Prayer, which is a mental act, must accept its own answer as an image in mind before the divine energies can play upon it and make it productive. Let us take the mental images of our desires to the bosom of the created life, and here make them known by impressing them upon it with positive belief. If we do this, our prayers will be answered. For instance, it is good to ask for a home. It is good for all people to have homes while here on earth. It is right to ask for one, but it would not be right to ask for one belonging to another. Oh dear, now I'm lost, or at least temporarily detoured, Penelope confesses. I thought that we had agreement that life and thus creativity is about spiritual life only. How now can we say it's okay to pray for a house, as long as we believe firmly in that house coming to us, but not at the risk of someone else's benefit, mind you? Then that house we will have. I'm confused. Did we just create another duality or not? This meal is getting more and more scrumptious, declares Joel, a smile curling at the corners of his mouth. Let me add some accoutrement to the table then, so we can get beneath the gravy into the meat of which this physical world knows not. Like that one, Joel? Penelope asks, knowing that Joel affirms metaphorical expression at every turn. He responds only with a smile turned up with glee. From a purely metaphysical point of view, she then continues, which makes some uncomfortable, what we're dealing with here is a house of thought that is obviously divided between truth and illusion, when there is only one. Arriving home in the fullness of the awareness we are. When we rest in the absolute comfort of being at home with our spiritual reality, then the house, if there's to be one at all, will automatically come into its own and represent exactly that for which it is a metaphor. Either all found outside truth is but a mirror to reflect the illusion we are living instead of truth, the sin, if you will, or it is not. We simply cannot have it both ways. There is no serving both God and mammon. Christo joins Joel in appreciation of Penelope's exposition. To that I'd agree. I think we probably all would, says Mary, with others nodding in affirmation. And I think that at least Ernest and I would agree that God wills us to have everything. And that we mean that when we put all our faith in expressing life, we feel God's law of abundance, and the illusion of lack is thus erased, healed in our thoughts and beliefs. In this way, it is our faith in the truth of matter as mine that is our abundance. This new meaning eradicates erroneous belief in lack. We then say we're healed. It's really the unbelief in abundance that has been healed. And once this is firm in our awareness, we find ourselves moving forward, taking all the necessary steps to complete our so-called dream of abundance in physical form. The erroneous form of thought called lack can no longer hold us back from demonstrating abundance, because our faith in the awareness of abundance has replaced it. Light thus renders darkness or ignorance as but an illusion, and truth must now prevail. That now is why I have said that there is no such thing as an incurable thought. That is a most eloquent way of clarifying the slight differences in view among us, Joel affirms. Wouldn't we all agree that what we see out there is largely useful only for letting us know to what horse we've attached our wagon of faith? Whether I think that I have an overabundance or simply that my sufficiency is of relative unimportance, it's my awareness of how I'm thinking or what I'm investing my conviction in at the moment that's important in this regard. Thus, the relative abundance or lack thereof is not what informs us of the truth of the matter. Rather, what we see outside us only points to the first cause that came to fruition, as only it can, through the law of creation. Whatever we take truth to mean, whether it is truth or not, is that which must manifest. Oh, thank you, Joel, says Penelope. That's precisely why I say that we are the prayer that is successfully fulfilled, whether we like it or not. The fulfillment of our conviction, what we present in that particular realm of belief at the moment, is what automatically answers its call. It is inevitable and irrevocable until and unless we become aware of what rings true to us and express it thus. Well, as I see it then, Christo adds, all that we see outside ourselves is precisely as depicted, a simple expression of what is in harmony with or separate from what really rings true to us. We instinctively know the truth. Its light is that bright in us, except we sometimes veil or cloud it from expression by the erroneous investments in faith to some illusory effect. Our foundation as divine beings is the truth that awaits awareness and activation. If we cloud the truth from ourselves, we will express some untruth instead. Now, that's not necessarily all bad news. Or if we become aware of what we see in the illusory form clearly as illusion, as some error in faith placed, then such awareness points us back to truth again. Once we resonate with what rings true to us, the image that is spoken as a metaphor for error disappears, and we, as a natural extension of the law of creation, automatically make every step in the direction of fulfilling the law of truth. We arrive at Mecca, our spiritual home, the perfect heart filled with only the loving way as its truth. I'm now completely comfortable where we are, Mary confirms at ease of soul, and others rest in kind. I'd like to cement that for us, adds Joel, by sharing my view on prayer. As you know, I have built my practice on Mary's extraordinary legacy, and I commend both her and Ernest's work to anyone's attention. I like to take it in a slightly different direction, yet for the same results. We all are in the healing academy, so to speak. We let our truth speak through us only as it can, uniquely, so that those who need certain imagery or a certain framework from which to stretch the spiritual meaning can have it at their disposal. Such is a teacher that shows up exactly when one is ready, and in every circumstance, exactly as each needs particular meaning in the moment. Now, I'm not going into slight differences we might harbor in our definition of God, but I like to take us to the way I like to access God. Prayer to me is not so much about talking at or to God, certainly in the way we normally talk or at or to one another. To me, this is wasted breath. As one in being with God, there's absolutely nothing that we want that God does not know about. Now, to listen to our honorees tonight, they would say that all we need to listen to is the ongoing expression of the highest good, the law of spiritual order, waiting but awareness and activation, if I may put words in their mouths. To the degrees that these terms are synonyms for God, I couldn't agree more. From my viewpoint, we don't need to speak our heart-rendering needs or desires for anyone outside us to hear. Those simply are what they are. As we have said, it is those in which we divest all our mind, heart, and soul and strength of conviction that we will manifest. My request to all of you, to anyone who will listen for that matter, is this. What is it that we really want to create or express? Is it that which correlates with illusion, or that which accrues to the expression of what rings true to us, and nothing else? I'd much rather invest my energy in listening only to what rings true to me, and following just that. Actually, because I am not aware of the existence of truth and what that means in spiritual terms, I don't need to exercise choice any longer. I don't even know there is choice when aware of truth. Truth is that compelling, because it resonates with what I now know I am. Because I finally know what I am, I innately know that what rings true to me is only what I'm to manifest. So, is what you're telling us, Joel, asked Christo, that you give no thought to anything but listening for the truth that is simply awaiting the purity of awareness, so it can then be demonstrated by you? Clear is the tone when pure crystal is struck, Joel responds. My only job is to sit in waiting. I'm always there, but if I'm running around like a chicken with my head cut off, either physically or spiritually in my mind, then I'm obviating the potential for resting in that very truth that awaits me. On the other hand, when one has mastered this approach, he can learn to find truth in active meditation, surely, simply by applying the same principle of spiritual listening, spiritual telepathy, I think you might even call it these days, while engaging life-lovingly. By engaging life-lovingly, I mean laying down one's investment in endless communication of self-gain for the truth that comes out of full attention to another's divinity in tandem with his own. It then becomes an engagement the resonance felt when observing God, not just by myself, but in both. What do you do in your healing practice then? Same thing? Or do you pray for or to the God in you for the one desirous of healing? Mary asks out of curiosity, for she has a pattern of her own that bears visiting. Well, that's not quite what I do, Mary, but it's close, he answers. When someone comes to me in some kind of pain or disease, I merely ask if they want me to pray for them. If they say that they do, then I give absolutely no thought to to either what they think they are or to the disease to which they have given their power. I do this remembering that disease is a construct of mind manifested in matter, so it can reflect where truth and error are in disharmony. Thus I take myself within and connect with the only thing I am aware of that exists as all, God, divine presence. When I find myself in that special closet within me, I connect with the truth of all existence. This enables me to see spiritual consciousness, God, as all there is, rather than insisting that the God in a particular person heal her. All I need to do is sit in this truth until I feel a resonance that informs me that I have connected to God, that is all. I then just let go and move on. I sometimes describe that feeling of resonance as sort of a click. I feel deep inside, like the latch to a door of truth just lock me in with all there is. By giving me the temporary power to express the divinity we all are, that disease one comes, on some level at least, to the peace that can be found only within. The concern they had previously experienced as disease is set free in the expression of new meaning for them. Healing erroneous understanding thus occurs, and the cure is close behind. I can't explain more than this, but I can affirm that this is the most powerful form of healing I have ever witnessed, for sure. Thank you for that, Joel. Mary says, you have indeed taken Christian Science to a new level, and I am so grateful. The difference between what you have described and what I have used for healing purpose is minute. I too let God speak to me, but what I hear as truth for the particular person is shared with them. For until they can connect with their innate divinity, they will most likely only engineer their way around the disease with intellectual rationalism. As we know, such an approach deals only with the effect or with the symptom of the disease they're feeling or buying into. What they need until and unless they learn to go within this for themselves, much as the Master Jesus admonished us all to do, is for any practitioner worth their salt to hold that space of truth sacrosanct, so the mind is free to activate the truth-awaiting awareness. The good news is that when someone issues the call for help, that is usually a clear sign that they are ready for the real teacher, that is, truth, to show up. You both seem to be saying, albeit somewhat differently, suggests Penelope, yet simultaneously implying it, that if we identify with the person's so-called disease, we are only adding to its manifestation, instead of the diseased one returning to the truth expressed for them. Oh yes, Mary asserts, that is a correct mediation of what I think both of us have said. Isn't that correct, Joel? Mary moves on, seeing Joel's nod of confirmation of the accuracy of her response. The first thing a Christian scientist will do is deny the authenticity of the illusion and then affirm the truth that consciousness guides him to understand. A good practitioner will never render a diagnosis as truth, rather only dismiss the claim as the illusion it is. We then affirm the characteristics of our godly image as the only truth, awaiting the only affirmation we need to share with the self-proclaimed ill at ease. And how about you, Ernest? Christo asked. Do you activate healing? Well, in reality, I really don't. The individual who has made the claim does. As a science of mind practitioner, our only job is to bring the client, so to speak, to his awareness of truth for him, just as Mary and Joel's followers do. Let me describe this process in some detail as if you were there with me when I work one who claims to be in need. I needed to wet my whistle a little bit there, thank you. Let me say that scientific mental healing is a result of clear thinking and logical reasoning, which presents itself to consciousness and is acted on by the mind. It is a systematic process of reasoning which unearths the mental cause of the underlying disease and presents the truth about man's being. For instance, say to yourself, God is all there is only one life. When you are treating, if there is any slight point that is not clear, do not continue with the treatment. Stop at once and go back to your analysis of ultimate reality and build your whole argument upon the truth of that reality in order to get clear consciousness. That process looks something like this. God is all. There is but one power, intelligence, and consciousness in the universe, but one presence. This one presence cannot change. There is nothing for it to change into but itself. It is changeless, and it is my life now. It is in me now. Claim that no form of race suggestion, belief and limitation, thought of karma, fatalism, theology or hell, horoscope or any other false belief has power. Accept none of them. If you have ever believed in them, if you've ever believed that the stars govern you, or that your environment governs you, or that your opportunities govern you, recognize this as a hypnotic condition into which you have fallen, and to deny every one of them until there is no longer anything in you that believes in them. This is a good way to clear your consciousness. We can readily see what it does. It introduces a clear perception of spiritual realities, which must reproduce itself. This process of clear thinking, if carried out every day, will heal. When you are giving a treatment, you are thinking. When you are meeting, opposing, neutralizing, erasing, or obliterating suppression, fear, doubt, failure, morbid emotion, and sense of loss, whatever the trouble may be, every time your thought hits fairly and squarely, it erases just as definitely as one would erase a chalk line. Such is the mystery of the appearance and the disappearance of thought. Ernest, this is so close to what we in Christian Scientists do. This is pouring in of right thought, or truth as some would call it, is that which will eventually purify. Yes, Mary, as we know all too well, this is precisely what happens, Ernest affirms. It's all about reestablishing the congruence between truth of the reshaped error of being so that the error is erased, leaving only the truth, summarized Penelope. You got it. So now we're all on the same page, suggested Joel, catching the affirming nods all around him. The only difference might be in the words we choose to use, but the process is so similar as to render the differences inconsequential. Well, I really like the idea Penelope has the temerity to say, of teaching everyone to come to what rings true to them daily, moment by moment, setting aside any erroneous beliefs of understandings that have been carried from the past. It sounds to me like it would take many lifetimes of full-time work to erase all the misinformation we carry with us. If we just started with a new slate, suggests Penelope, like Christo has explained to us, using this metaphor of the loom upon which we weave our lives, this might well do the same thing, and with it all the unnecessary complexity. Establishing the faith of God in truth only, while becoming aware of, but giving no credence to, all those erroneous thoughts, it seems to me that the truth would automatically eliminate error, for error is only illusion. We pay any more attention to illusion than simply recognizing and setting it free, and then returning to the loom of truth as the only form of our life would be to give power to it neither has nor deserves. I feel somewhat the same way about some of the other teachings, like A Course in Miracles. While serving as a highly disciplined approach to shifting one's mindset, its focus on ego is frequent, while at the same time saying that the ego is an illusion and not reality. I like some of the conclusions that the Course in Miracles come to, primarily because of their ties to the Master Jesus. But focusing so much on ego seems to give too much credence to the illusion, when it's focused on reality that heals the very illusory form. Well, she thinks, I'm satisfied that we're resting in common understanding, largely because what I'm hearing resonates with the truth I hear within me, and that's plenty good enough for me. If that isn't enough to convince us to go on, then perhaps there's plenty good enough here to speak to many, and the very ways in which we need to hear good, Christo stresses. Besides, if we just rest in the divinity each of us is, understanding the full weight of that we're all well on our way to the fullness of being. Amen to that, Waldo declares. This has been the most enjoyable, and yet I know that the five of you could feast on all the rest of what you teach by your example. My only admonition, which you all know by now, is to keep life simple. Yes, lest you lose those who follow your example in the details, rather than being affirmed by its principle. I suppose we're getting close to the dessert course, or is it time for the theater production, Penelope asks. All the rest look at each other with inward expressions akin to a smile on the face of a sly fox, which Penelope does not miss, by the way, but keeps to herself just now. All is unfolding in perfect order, she announces to herself, and all get it that she's on board. And inward smiles of content find their way across their faces. Either way, I know it will be just perfect, just as this hearty meal has been with the three of you. You have been just yummy, she says with great affection. You can say that again, joins Christo. You have been just, Penelope starts, pulling Christo's leg in jest. No, you know I didn't really mean that, Christo exclaims to Penelope, holding up one hand as a stop sign, while at the same time taking her hand and placing her arm over Waldo's as they walk out the door. Enough of that, he says. Never enough of that, the trio says back to them as they exit the dining room, waving a tender and grateful farewell, if only for the time being. So that's the end of chapter 7. A stunning chapter for sure. It may take some revisiting on your part. It does for me every time I read it. Other things tap into my essence of being and become full awareness for me. I say, whoa, I'd forgotten that for a bit. Time to reinstate it in my mind and soul. So here we are, my friends. Here we are, ready to take some time away from each other for a week, and to be well, stay happy, and be a living example, a loving example for all of us around us. As you know, I like to end with a little clip of a post somewhere on the internet, and here's one that I shared this week, shared by Sri Ramana Maharshi. Guru comes only to tell that God is within yourself. Dive within and realize God, Guru, and the self are the very same. Let me say it again. God comes only to tell that God is within yourself. Dive within and realize God, Guru, and self are the same. Indeed, you are that one in sameness. Celebrate it in yourself, as you be yourself this week. Until we meet again next week, friends, stay well, be happy, be love. I love you.